Grabe ang bilis. September 29 na, Coach.
Oo nga. Parang nilipad yung 2020, no?
Oo.
Ang klase.
Ang bilis number.
Yes. Ano na, wake me up when September ends.
Tingnan natin kung naka-live na tayo.
Okay. Naka-prompt na as live.
Yan, mga kaibigan. It's Tuesday again.
Yes.
Nice to see you again, partner. Every
Nice
week
to
lang
see
tayo
you
nagkikita,
again.
kaya tuwan-tuwa ako pag Martes. Okay. At ang iyong iba't ibang backgrounds.
Challenge. Nagandang kasi ako sa background mo. Naghanap tuloy ako ng...
Oh, ito ay hindi mo na itatanong. Ito ay sa, kung tawagin ay Buffalo Swings and Things, Market.
Ayan.
Ayan yan. So inaabangan na natin ang pagbubukas niyan, no? So ngayong gabi, ano ba yung meron tayo ngayong gabi, partner?
Ay, ang dami nating what's in store for tonight. Of course, before that, yung yung ating review. And then, yung mga nag-participate sa ating new segment called Tangere Quick Serve Research.
Oo. Yun ang nakaka-excite yung mga naging kasagutan. And we have Mr. Erk Acapulco to help us explain that later.
Mm-hmm.
So, syempre, habang hindi pa naman meron pa akong 1 minuto para sa ating batihan.
Oo.
Hindi ako nakabati last week. So, ang dami nagtampo. Sorry Ray Perez. Ayan. Jen Roa. No? Lenore Zapanta. Ayan. Pastor Aling Nang. Opo, kapatid ko po yan. No? Maraming salamat sa suporta. Solia Mark Ian. Of course, si Mr. Elmer Divina Gracia. Makilala rin ng mga bisita natin ngayong gabi yan. Ito mula sa Norway. Kanina napag-usapan natin, no? From the Norwegian Cruise Lines. No?
Mm-hmm.
No? Madalas sa Norway to si June Sanger, no? Si Tarsem Sanger. Yan po ay Pilipino po yan, no? Indian lang yung pangalan niya, pero Indian, Phil-Indian siya na aking kaibigan niya, no? Isa sa matalik kong kaibigan. Nasa cruise ship sila, no? Isa sa mga ito na mistaken sila yung unang-unang bumiyahe na cruise ship noon sa pandemic. So congratulations, brother. From Toyota, Philippines, Budoy Carolino, taga Marikina yan, no? Sherwin Julius De Leon sa Langsang, regular natin yan. Nympha Arce. Si Jen Roa, nabati natin kanina. Good evening po. Jordan Bernardo of Mad Cafe. Of course, isa sa naging guest natin, no? John Paul San Juan. Ang dami nang nanonood na hatak ni John Paul San Juan. Maraming salamat sa pagpaparami ng mga taga-tangkilik ng coach and share, no? Yung mga guest natin ganun pag naghatak minsan, yung iba nawiwili na sila sa panonood.
Totoo.
Of course, yung ating regular Hotel Marciano, Mr. Lance, si Erwin Lancero, great evening sa iyo. Joy C. Visitacion, Joy Hermones, yan, good evening sila, no? Ang mga taga Project Pi naman, barkadahang Project Pi, no? Mga kasama ko dahil sa Project Pi. Of course, Melvin Cortez, no? Jomar De Leon, ako, yung mga kasama ng bisita natin yan sa Pizza Pie, mga taga Pizza Pie yan. Shakey's Pizza, no? Si Jomar De Leon. Roberto Tabinas, maraming salamat po. Linggo-linggo na po kayo namin kasama. Nika De Belen, of course. Jess Pineda, no? Jessamine Tintiman, oy, yan po sa mga original na employees ng Buffalo Swings and Things din, no? Donald Tenorio, of course, from the land down under. Si Donald Tenorio, si Coach Donald. Mag-guest daw siya ulit, no?
Oo.
So, si Katie Borja, ayan, meron din siyang sariling vlog. Panoorin niyo po yan sa YouTube. At saka dati po yan, isa sa mga original servers and front of the house team leaders ng Buffalo Swings and Things. Si Katie. Si Zark, syempre, nanonood dahil sa suporta sa kanyang, mamaya, sorpresa kung sino sinusuportahan niya ngayon. Maria Bernadette Rile Navarro, ba ng pangalan ng kumare ko, no? Taga-Bataan yan, mga kapatid. Taga-Bataan at Tarlac, represent. Si Lorraine, of course, nanonood din sa atin. And with that, no, we would like to start the show with a recap of our past episodes. Sabi ko nga, humingi po ako ng tawad sa mga hindi nabati. No? Yun yata yung list na batian last week dahil sobra talagang no? Ang galing din ng guest natin, ang dami niyang baon. Sabi ko nga, nagulat ako. 14 years pala yung yung pop talk, no?
Oo.
So sabi ko nga, kung gagamitan mo lang ng simpleng arithmetic, gamitan mo ng how many restaurants per episode, weekly episode, 52 episodes per year, no? Wow. archive of knowledge. Sige, ano yung recap mo, kapatid?
Yes, bukod sa tuwang-tuwa ako doon sa episode natin last week, yung thought din na sobrang lakas ng ulan last week pero madaming nag-hold on. Talagang pinapanood pa rin yung ating episode. At together with our...
Nagpapasalamat ako sa kapatid, sa Facebook dahil nung live medyo hirap pero nung ni-replay na nila, buong buo.
Bumbuo.
No, buong buo yung episode and then nag-improve yung audio, no.
Yes.
So, our apologies kasi kami po ay mga bagito rin sa larangan ng broadcasting, no. Opo ay pero wala akong excuse na pag-aralan ko ng kolehiyan. So sorry po, hindi natin naayos yung audio dahil sobrang lakas po talaga ng ulan.
Oo.
Ako rin po, naka-headset na, naka-earphones na ako pero naririnig ko pa yung ulan sa bintana.
Sobrang lakas.
Buti lang wala akong sinampay, no?
Pero
kapatid.
nagpapasalamat din tayo dun sa you mentioned nga ways of broadcast. Madami na rin nag-review ng full broadcast natin on YouTube, sa ating YouTube channel. So maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat sa iyo yan. Sa pag-upload at saka siyempre si Bianca. No? Ayan po, maganda sa YouTube. Pwede nyo pong diretso na sa TV. Di ba? Yung mga smart TV ngayon, naka-YouTube na karamihan ng mga palabas. So please do. Pwede nyo reviewin.
Subscribe, yes.
Diba? 21 episodes na po yan na naka-upload.
Ayan. So, okay. Di natin paghihintayin nating mga guests. Ang top 3 to review natin for last week is, first things first, ang pinaka-exciting na line is harness the power of social media to amplify our message.
Yun, napakaganda po, no? So, medyo lilinawin natin, amplify yung message. So, yung message po dapat, gaya ng ating resto quote, no? Iugnay natin no sa ating resto quote. Madami ng mga portions natin, no? So, resto quote natin last week, yung is social media using you, di ba? Or are you using social media? So, tama, nag-amplify siya ng mensahe. So, kailangan tamang mensahe yung nating binobroadcast sa social media. Yes. So, isang napakagandang tool. Sabi nga ni Mr. Pop Talk, ni ating kaibigan, Director Tony Pet Gaba, no, na sinabi niya na napakapalad natin sapagkat ngayon sa age of social media, napakadaling i-amplify ng message. At yung word of mouth, no, even sila, naka-online na yung nila, no, yung episodes ng Pop Talk. Napakagandang platform para kumalat po yung mga bagong restaurants, yung mga nagnenegosyo, for as long as you deserve, no? Sabi nga niya, yung quality, no? Yung quality ng produkto, yung in-emphasize niya, no? I'm sure, kung deserving po at may value po yung inyong proposition, madali po siyang ma-promote sa social media.
Yes. At saka very much connected to his 14 years of experience, yung trend yan na nakita dun sa number 2 natin is staying power of restaurants depending on, paulit-ulit niya sinabi sa episode which is very important, the authenticity. The strong product, memorable service and experience as well as the strong leadership.
Oo, medyo iba-ibang definition ng authenticity. But in this case, ginamit niya na sinabing authenticity, staying true to your roots, no? Ano ba, balikan mo yung mission mo nung nagsimula ka, nung nag-a-apply ka pa lang na makita sa Pop Talk, no? Nung nag-aalok ka ng produkto mo sa social media, no? Huwag mawawala yung passion na yon to always do your products right and to represent the brand, no, the best way you can. Commitment to excellence ang tawag namin yan sa Buffalo's Wings and Things. Isa sa mga 4 pillars ng Buffalo's Wings and Things yan, no? Commitment to excellence, no? Kailangan bawat plato. Sa mga nakakilala sa akin bilang coach mula pa nung dati pa, ang sinasabi ko parate, no, I always end a session by saying, no, the restaurant business is so unique because in the restaurant business, you have to take care of your customers one plate at a time, one customer at a time, one transaction at a time, one shift at a time, and so on and so forth. No? Talagang yung attention to that one customer, that one interaction, and that one engagement.
Nice. And then, I liked how our episode ended with a very high note na we are on the way to a strongest and brightest time for the food and travel industry, but we just really need to support each other.
Yes, because 14 years ng Pop Talk, nakita na rin ni Tony Pet yung kaya natin siya gines. In fact, sa totoo lang, babalik siya talaga, no? Dahil ang dami niyang pwedeng i-share sa atin, no? Nanliit ako sa yung coaching share is just 22 episodes, no? Young, no? But, imagine yung kanilang daladalang dami ng restaurants na nakita nila. And sabi ko nga, I will volunteer to dissect the data that they have, di ba? I will volunteer to dissect dahil napakasarap, no? Napakasarap aralin nun, no? Napakaraming restaurants, tas may hindsight, may benefit of hindsight. Pwede mo nang balikan sino yung mga nagtagumpay, di ba? Sino yung mga hanggang ngayon talagang namamayagpag pa or sino yung mga namahinga, Pero mga nag-evolve, no? And so, yun yung sinasabi natin, no? Na napakaganda ng mensahe niya na naniniwala siya na the great rebound is bound to happen. Hindi lang bouncing back, no? The great rebound, sabi niya na imagine, no? Napaka-descriptive niya kasi director nga at saka artista din, no? Sinasabi niya na imagine the time na pag natapos tong lahat, kung gaano kasarap, no? Kung gaano kasarap, gaano kadami, at gaano kasarap i-broadcast yung dami ng restaurants na magkakaroon ng renaissance, ika nga.
Totoo. Yes. And with that, we move on to our exciting results ng ating new segment na Tangere
yung ating weekly survey.
Yes.
Ano ba yung quick survey results?
Quick serve research. QSR.
Quick serve research.
Yes.
Parati ako nalilito. Pagpasensyaan nyo na po. Maraming salamat sa Tangere. Pero nakabawi naman ako dahil ine-endorse ko po yan. Sa lahat po ng tagapakinig na may-ari po ng mga businesses, particularly sa restaurants, very, very highly recommended po talaga ang paggamit ng Tangere. No, napaka-insightful po and napakabilis ng results. No? So without further ado, introduce natin si, nawala yata si Irk. No? Pero papakita ko, share ko yung screen ng survey results. Parang ako biglang magpapaliwanag nito dahil wala si Irk.
Siya eh.
Pero okay lang. No? Wala namang problema. I'll do my best.
Yes.
And ikaw din, taga-marketing ka naman.
Yes.
Ayan. So sinasabi po dyan, gaya na nabanggit ni partner share, no? Last week po, sinimulan yung pagpapasurvey kasi nga ang ina-advocate natin dito yung wag naman tayo magkwentuhan ng opinion lang, no? Sapagkat sa totoo lang po, may value yung opinion pero mas mataas po yung value ng insights. And insights only, one of the critical elements of insight is to have information, no? Yung mga feedback from customers and of course yung mga from doing surveys, no? So ito pong Tangere survey, September 22 to 25, understanding challenges and opportunities in these changing times.
Yes, very fresh na fresh,
no?
Yes, 22 to 25. Sobrang fresh.
Sariwang-sariwa. So ito po, no, gaya ng ibang mga surveys, ipinakikita po yung naging limitations of the study. No? Parang sinasabi dyan na as much as it wanted to ask as many people as possible, with, of course, Tangere, ang pinaka-value nila is they have 350,000 plus members of their survey community na parati ang sumasagot sa kanilang mga surveys. No? Ang taas ng population nila. Active po itong mga to. No? And with geographic locations not randomly selected. Napakagandang insight nun. So, ito pong survey na to, responses from, 10,300
ang bilis,
participants.
No? Yeah.
So, imagine mo yung turnaround, no? No, grabe, no? Napag-uusapan lang natin. And, I could just imagine, no, the amazement of people who engage Tangere. Because, dati, pag nagpa-survey ka, ilang buwan, eh. Isang buwan, di ba?
Tsaka mahirap abutin ng 10,300. Yes, and it's expensive.
10,300, So, no wonder sila ang nanalo sa CNN version ng Shark Tank. No? Sige. So, sabi dyan, while this study may not be a full representation of the Philippine population, it really, nakatago yung pangalawang bahagi ng slide. Nevertheless, serves as a barometer. Tama po, ito po isang barometro ng general consciousness ng mga Pilipino sa mga panahon ito. Yes, it's an indication. Okay. Sabi dyan, ikaw na, partner. Marketing ka.
Yeah, so, yes. On question number 1, yun nga yung tanong natin last week na, when have you last dined in a restaurant? So, majority, which is 53%, others yung sinagot. Pero on 12% past week, the 11% is past month, past 2 months, yung 5%, and yung pinakamalaki is yung 19%, past 3 months. So medyo matagal na yung since yung last nilang pag-dine out.
And kami, from the restaurant industry, we can attest to that. No? Dumalang talaga. No? For obvious reasons, and aside from that also, magandang maintindihan yung sentimiento. Sabi nga natin, COVID is not just a physical, limitation, or it's a medical hindrance, or medical, if we may call it battle, no? But it's also a mindset and mind frame phenomenon because hindi mo ang behavior kasi ng tao nanggagaling yan sa kung ano yung mindset nila no?
Totoo.
Nilang sentimento. So yung pinaka holy grail ngayon yung confidence.
Totoo.
Yung
Actually,
bumalik
feeling
ang
ko nga
kumpiyansa.
yung 53% na yan, past 6 months pa before the start of MCO.
Yes. Talagang naging ermitanyo, no?
Totoo.
Nagtago sila talaga. Okay. Sige.
Yes.
Question number 2.
And question number 2. Yan. If you would think of a situation we're facing because of the pandemic, how would you describe your feelings? Ayan na, sentiments na towards dining in restaurants. Ito. The real truth is it's negative. Yung 35% niya as negative.
Wow,
Tapos
35% is negative.
Taas,
no?
diba? Tapos 28% as neutral. So talagang wala yung affinity. And sadly,
Wala
20% is very negative. So sobrang negative yung 55%.
Pero
So,
sabi nga nung mga kaibigan ko, hindi ko napapangalanan, no? At least alam mo na yung feelings niya. Diba? So,
yes.
hindi ko nagkikwento kung anong topic namin. No? Pero ito, importante sa akin itong mga nagninegosyo because alam natin kung ano ang dahilan doon sa question number 1. No? It's basically, no, sabi ko nga, nandirito. No? At saka nandirito sa kanilang nararamdaman sa pangyayari sa pandemya. No?
Yes.
Yung positive, 13%, mabuhay po kayong mga, no, positive lang naman yung mindset. No? Hindi naman sila positive sa COVID. No? Optimistic sila. Saka palaban, no? Lumalaban sila talaga. Parang nandyan ako sa 13% na yan.
Yes.
Ako kasi ang katwiran ko, basta meron akong mask, basta meron akong face shield, meron akong alcohol na keychain, no? Yan ang keychain ko ngayon, alcohol dispenser. Tapos meron akong, yung conscious ako sa social distancing, hindi naman ako kinakabahang pumunta sa mga tindahan at sa mga malls.
Totoo.
Ayan.
Yeah. And question number 3, what are your main concerns? Ayan na, lumalalim na. Lumalalim na, the why. Yeah. Bakit when you're dining in restaurants? Yan. As expected, safety and mahawa sa virus ang main concerns. Tapos next
dapat i-combine mo yan. No? Pwede mo i-combine, no, kapatid.
Pwede. No? Pwede. Yan talaga
3,000 plus 2,000 plus 1,000, no? Magkakaugnay. Actually, lahat, no?
Totoo. Actually,
yung naiba lang yung malungkot.
Yes, oo. Totoo. Pero,
so, doon sa 10,000 na sinurvey, karamihan talaga, safety talaga. Delikado, no? Kalinisan at ano ba yung hygiene sa Tagalog? Wala yatang translation sa Tagalog yan. Sa Filipino. Social distancing protocols are not being followed. Yun, merong ano. Ako naiinis din ako minsan pag nakikita kong hindi sinusunod ang mga social distancing, physical distancing protocols. No? Kasi wala namang pinipili po ang virus. No? Yan po ay kumakapit sa kahit sinong tao. So ang rule lang talaga, no? Magkakalayo po tayo. Diba? Parang minsan nakakalimutan no? Porki ka mag-anak, porki kaibigan, no? Porki maganda, no? Kapilahan sa bus, no? Nakalimot, no?
Dikit.
Afraid to dine in at mahawa sa virus. So basically, ang why nila is safety, no?
Yes,
safety. Next.
And then question number 4, what steps should the restaurant do? Ito na, what to do to encourage you to dine in? Very well connected.
Yan naman, sinasabi naman di ba?
Yan na.
Safety protocols lang ang hinahanap nila, cleanliness. Yung promos and discounts, medyo iba yan, no? Value ang hinahanap nila. No? Wala, ito yung malulupit nung wala. Wala kayong magagawa. Takot ako.
Wala na.
Maghihintay siya ng bakuna talaga.
Service,
no? Maganda, nakadyan pa rin naman yung service, yung promos and discounts. No? And alam mo, ang nakakatuwa dito sa mga kasama po natin sa resto negosyo, mga resto negosyantes, mga empleyado, mga kasama natin sa industriya, napakadali po ng solusyon. Yun naman ang paborito ko sa ganito kasi hindi naman tipong nanakot lang tayo na talaga, hala, ayaw nilang lumabas, hindi naman ganun Question number 4, sinabi naman dyan, ito lang po ang hinihingi ng lahat. Safety protocols. Yan, ganda naman balita naman pala nito.
May magagawa.
Yun, no? So, ayan, paalala lang natin, no? Ito pong bahaging ito ay hatid sa inyo ng Tangere.
Yes.
No, napakalaki po ng value nito. Binibigay po sa ating lahat ang impormasyon na to ng libre. No, I cannot overemphasize that. Binabayaran po ito, no? Pero sa atin pong pakikipagtulungan at collaboration with Tangere. Magpasalamat po tayo sa kanila at irekomenda natin sila sa ating mga kaibigan sa industriya. Ako po, napakarami ko ng beses na inirekomenda sapagkat napakalaking tulong po talaga. Ulitin ko, information is important. No, hindi lamang po experience, hindi na po pwede yung opinion pag nagde-decide tayo sa negosyo, lalo po ngayong panahon ng pandemya. At nakita nyo po yung preba, no, September 22 nila ginawa yung survey. Pinag-uusapan na natin ngayon yung resulta.
Correct.
Ang bilis. Mabuhay po ang Tangere. Next week, meron po tayong weekly survey, so abangan nyo po sa aming page sa Facebook at syempre po sa Tangere main page kung ano po ang ating mga survey questions for next week. Ito po, no, pag pinanood yung replay, available po sa inyo itong mga data na ipopost natin to na share, no? Ipopost natin tong resulta nito dahil binili naman ng Tangere na i-share sa lahat ng nanonood ng Coach and Share ang resulta. So yan po ang ating unang dalawang segment. Pakilala natin ang ating mga bisita sa gabing ito.
Ayan, ang ganda. Kasi di ba meron tayong It's Going Digital, It's Going Social. Ngayon, ang title ng ating episode 22 is It's Going Places, the expansion to the new normal. So ang ating mga sobrang fresh at bagets na guests, we'd like to welcome Jeleen, Julio, and Bianca.
Yan, palakpakan po mga kaibigan.
Yan. O, di ba? Fresh na fresh.
Hi.
At joining us also para sa ating panel, no, ang taga-Tangere, si Erk, no, he will also share his insights during the discussions. And of course, kanina, no, unfortunately, nagkaroon ng technical difficulties during the discussion of the survey. But of course, he's here to join us and feel free, Erk, to share your insights. No? Sige, magtanong ka na, kapatid. Andain mong tanong na itinanong na pinadala sa ating mga bisita. So, hindi na ako makahintay marinig ang kanilang mga kasagutan.
Ayan, welcome to our guests. So, first question, what has been the overall impact on ongoing pandemic to the Philippine resto industry? Ano yung overall impact?
Yan, pag grand finals agad. Ganyan
agad
talaga,
no? Ang bigat
ganyan talaga
agad
si Cher. Yung mga tanong niya, either pang Miss
no?
Universe or pang grand finals. Sige. Saka ano yan ha? In 100 words or less?
Yes.
Okay.
Sige.
Sige. I'll start na lang perhaps.
Sige, si Julio.
Sige. Go ahead.
Sige. So, I think it's no secret to everyone naman na out of all of the sectors in business, no, the restaurant talaga is one of the hardest hit, no? And this is also trickling down din yung effect niya in our employment sector, given the vast majority of Filipinos are not only employed in restaurants but are also employed by brands or services that are supporting restaurants. No? So there's a vast majority of our country's economy talaga is very reliant on the performance of restaurants. No? And I guess one of the siguro mga more visible examples of the effect of this is the mall markets. No? Because predominantly, if you haven't been paying as much attention to how the landscape of the mall culture has evolved throughout the past couple of years, medyo it's been an almost dynamic shift no, from what used to be, I guess, in the 80s or the 90s na primarily retail yung nagde-drive ng mall markets or traffic, no. Nowadays, no, especially in the last siguro 10 years or so, this has shifted greatly to house more restaurants. Actually, if I remember correctly, most malls now operate at about 40 to 50% of their tenant mix to be restaurants, which is unheard of like 5 years ago na nag-average na to ng about 15 to 20. So nakikita natin na everyone's been trying to adapt, no? May it be restaurants themselves or the industries that house these restaurants, no? And slowly it's been taking a toll, but you know, everyone's been trying to be creative naman on how to go about it or manage it on their own ways. Yeah.
Jel, do you want to chime in? Yeah, I agree with Julio. Well, makikita naman natin with the current situation, there are a lot of restaurants nowadays that with regards to expansion, some of them really do not prioritize expansion nowadays. Parang they're more into parang sustenance na lang muna tayo ngayon. Parang ganyan yung peg natin nowadays. It's been negatively affected. Our restaurant industry is negatively affected. Hindi naman natin yun makakaila. A lot of, if you can see, even before actually the COVID, uh, yung mga food parks natin, nagsara. And then with the advent of pandemic, lalo silang tinamaan. And the other, of course, yung mga small businesses, small restaurants, like in Maginhawa or in Capitolio, there are a lot of also small businesses that closed down because of due to pandemic. So it's really here, it's really happening. So it's a matter of how you react with the situation and knowing what we should do or knowing what your um, disadvantages. So you're currently kasi your disadvantages would be your advantage. Now knowing what your disadvantages are will be your advantage. So I think um, yeah, that's it. It's negatively affected.
Yeah, I think I want to pick up from what Jel said. In knowing what you have to do, one of the things which I think all of us have noticed for the Philippine industry in particular is that there was a forced adoption into digital. If you weren't yet in the digital sphere in terms of delivery, you had to move there. If you didn't yet have the ability to take cashless payments, you had to make it available because that's exactly what people wanted. So I feel that right now, in terms of the food industry, we were pretty quick in terms of adapting to those needs. A lot of the restaurants were able to get onto the different delivery aggregator platforms. The Gcash and Paymaya, cashless portals took off, and all of those things. But more than that, I think something that I also want to point out that's a positive note naman, as a result of the pandemic is the collaboration and the strengthening of the Philippine food industry. Recipe has been a guest on the show. We know that the collaboration is happening. Instead of becoming, very antagonistic against everybody and being hyper competitive, what's happening is that everybody wants to be there to support one another and to ensure that everybody is going to survive. I mean, as much as possible. Of course, there are casualties na hindi talaga natin ma-avoid, but in the greater scheme of things, it's really transforming into collaborative environments, which is not just among the restaurants, but even with the employees. One thing which we saw, and again, I'm referencing also to earlier episodes, is the resilience of the Filipinos, the desire to work, and more than that, the desire to actually provide comfort to fellow Filipinos by, giving them the opportunity to order from their favorite restaurants. So yung mga, all those little things na kaya nilang gawin in order to make it easier for others, that's what I think is a positive that came out of the pandemic for the food industry for us.
Well, I'd just like to give an opportunity for Eric to to relate
Right.
of course the
Yes.
answers of our guests, no? Parang na-validate
Yes.
yung mga survey results natin eh. Sige, can you please elaborate, no? Kanina I'm sure we didn't do justice dun sa pagkakapaliwanag namin. Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Because for the past 3 minutes, everyone was going ngongo. As I already warned everyone, I apologize. Sorry, Globe, but I have to call you out on this. You're really making it hard, not just for everyone to communicate. No, so okay, my back. So just like to share some important statistics that we got. So thank you for giving us the opportunity, Boss Rommel and everyone. Hopefully everyone's hearing me fine. I'm standing in behalf of Boss Martin. I'm from the Tanghira team. So we have a portion that we call QSR now, which was brilliantly coined by Miss Gosse. So So these are quick survey results from Tangere. So for those who don't know Tangere yet, you can try downloading us. We're available now on Android, iOS, and also in Huawei App Gallery. So we did some quick survey for you guys so that you can digest this and hopefully they're insightful. So one question we asked our 300 plus thousand active users across the Philippines, no, is we got 10,000 responses from 3 days last week that we ran the survey quickly. First question that we asked was, what was how when was the last time that they have tried dining in a restaurant? And about 1/8 lang answered that the past week they've tried, no, and about half has actually tried dining in the past 3 months, no. So and the general feedback that we got from the numbers is that there's more than half of it, about 70%, if I remember, no, 55%, if I remember it right, were generally negative experience in their dining experience. You know, given the social distancing requirements, you have to fill in the piece of paper. Everyone has to comply with IATF requirements and DTI requirements. And there's about a 20 something percent that said they're neutral. But what's troubling, and I know that everyone is trying to encourage diners to go back to our restaurants, no? And I've experienced it myself. Only the remaining 20 something percent said that their experience was pleasant. And we asked why their general feeling of negativity to very negative experience of dining in recently came about. The biggest factor really was the feeling of safety. Of course, it's understood. We all feel it. I don't need to emphasize how this pandemic has given everyone some level of insecurity and anxiety. And diners as well, syempre, yung feeling of safety, that was really what gave them that not so positive experience, no? Number two, is also, they noticed that some restaurants, parang for compliance na lang yung for piece of paper that they sign in, and you getting their body temperature. But the bigger question is, um, are people really uh, complying to minimum health standards? No. For example, those thermometers that you put in everyone's forehead, um, it actually exposes more people nga to possible infection because from forehead to forehead you do that, no? And then the sharing of pens and all that. I'm sure a lot of us are trying to employ now. Sige, we clean the pens after it's used by someone. But there's also the general question, what do you do with all of these pieces of paper that you put your health declarations and your names and all your parang raffle draw, yun nga yung sabi ng mga diners. A lot of them, tinatapon din naman yan after. So, hindi siya nakaka-add ng value sa feeling of safety ng diners in general. There were also a few that mentioned that nakakalungkot na mag-dine ngayon sa restaurants. Kasi nga parang you're alone in a table and then yung bed, that experience, that beautiful experience that we do as friends, as family when we dine out, it's taken away by this pandemic. So those are the numbers that we got, and hopefully we know that that's the general feeling that everyone's getting, but we try to put some sense and numbers into it, and of course those numbers are open and we're more than happy to share them with everyone.
Yes,
Hopefully
yes.
you find them insightful, no? And hopefully we can present possible solutions to everyone who's listening in the coming weeks, because again, ang magandang kinalabasan nitong pandemic is the bayanihan spirit more than ever is buhay na buhay in the Philippine resto industry, and everyone feels it in this call, I think.
Thank you, Erk. Ano? Kasi parang naiugnay natin yung mga komentaryo ng ating mga bisita with the results of the survey, and that's really great, no? And yung advocacy ng coach and shares, of course, no? Mag-create ng mindset na positive and optimistic, no? Yun nga yung ending parati natin, di ba? Stay safe, healthy, and optimistic, di ba? So, nandun tayo sa, align tayo ron, no? align tayo na ang dapat natin pinopromote yung solusyon. So, again, no, next week magkakaroon pa uli ng survey and again, the first step is to download the app. Download the Tangere app, no, sa inyong mga phones para mas maka-participate ka dito. Okay, what's the next question, partner?
At saka yung reminder sa Tangere, hindi lang participation, meron pang prizes, di ba?
Hindi natin marinig si Erk. Parang he's trying to say something. Well, anyway.
Yes, and
go ahead, Erk.
Price members in the in the restaurant community. We also donate a lot of meals to frontliners, no. That's also a way of giving back to the community. As we would like to say nga in Tangere, and I'm sure we would all agree, no, we can't accept that this is the new normal. What we are trying to build is a better normal. Diba?
Yeah, a better normal. Sulat natin yan. Napakagandang katagal.
Oo. Hindi na lang i-accept yung
Hindi man porky new, okay na, di ba? Dapat better normal.
Yes. Okay.
Sige, go ahead, share.
Okay. Next question. Ano
Proceed
yung
with
types
your
of...
questions.
Yes. Sorry for that slight technical difficulty, but question number 2. Ano yung types ng restaurants that have been most affected and which one have proven to be more resilient or have adapted?
Right.
Ayan.
Okay, we'll follow the same order.
Yes.
Okay. Para ano. Siguro among the type of restaurants that has been or that have been affected greatly, no, it's really the casual dining market. It's no secret to everyone na, you know, our old favorites, especially, you know, restaurants that you would normally dine in as a group, no, is almost impossible. It's almost impossible to do that now. As much as we would want to socialize and get together again in those kinds of environments, it's not practical, for lack of a better term already. Among the casual dining market, I guess sorry to siguro specify or be more specific about this, but the buffet concepts is also if not mas amplified yung effect sa kanila, no? Or any other brand that has been fully reliant on volume and maximizing their seating capacity, no? Because the MECQ requirement alone was had mandated na 40% na lang of your floor seating capacity is allowed to be utilized, or to at one point it was 30%, I think. No, and I think as we will experience easing ng mga what we call this mechanics of how to navigate the restaurant industry in the next couple of months by the government, no? Magsi 60, 70, 80% man yan na allowable na dine-in capacity. I think there is an aftershock pa rin na or na effect, or there is this what we call this will almost, or the customers will almost be preconditioned already to think that way, no? And medyo na-train na sila over the course of the pandemic to look at or perceive restaurants in that manner, no? On the flip side, no, the best performing ones, I guess, are those who were already delivery ready, no? May digitized na at least a component of their services were already digitized prior to the pandemic. Those who were who operated in rather manpower light na operations and with little overhead and supply requirement, na medyo single concept stores or QSRs, no, like I don't know, milk tea, mga those kinds of concepts na one product, 2-3 products with small leased spaces na medyo accessible to, you know, residential markets. Those were, I think, no, if you scan throughout the industry, I think yun ang lumalabas na umaangat, if not only had gotten better over the course of the lockdown.
How about
Okay.
you, Jel?
Yeah, I agree also with Julio. So the restaurants that relied heavily on delivery and takeout even before this pandemic, I think they have already positioned themselves.
Yeah.
And then of course they have a smaller and cheaper in terms of store sizes.
Yep.
So yung mga dining spaces nila are much smaller, so they're not spending much on the dining experience. So I think they're more resilient now. They're more prepared because they've been doing that even before the pandemic. And then I think those restaurants that rely heavily on in-house dining, yung mga casual dining, I think they're greatly affected. So sila yung mas mahihirapan, especially those restaurants who doesn't have delivery or hindi sila nakafocus sa delivery or takeout services.
Yeah. May
Bianca?
pa lang ako ng konti. I mean, I agree with everything that Julio and Jel have said thus far. Those are a lot of the technical specs nga that would allow for somebody to be successful and to flourish. But I want to touch on also less tangible portions and parts of the business that really allow for restaurants to be resilient. The first thing I want to talk about is having a really strong team, people who really operate the store as if they were an owner and really have a love for the brand and want to ensure that it will survive. I think we all agree naman na the core of any business is really its people, whether that's retail, whether that's food, whatever it is. Your strength lies in the people that you have and the people who will help ensure that your business will be successful. On the other side of that, aside from having your operational team, we've touched on this a couple of times also throughout the episodes of the Resto Coach. It's important to have active brand loyalists. If you have your solid base of customers who will continue to patronize you and who trust you and who know that the quality that you will provide is always good, they're the people who will continue to come back and to support you regardless of what's going on.
Yeah.
They're also the same people who will encourage others to support your business because they don't want to see you close. Para hindi nila matanggap na mawala yun sa kanila. So it's your team and it's your active brand loyalists. But the last thing that I also want to touch on, which is not very tangible, is in terms of the leadership. Again, it's so important that businesses are clear on what their purpose and their goals are. And that actually starts with the leadership. If the leadership is very clear with their vision and they're able to cascade that across your entire organization and everybody buys in and everybody is in agreement, that's also what's going to ensure that your business will survive in the long run. Yan lang.
Galing
Parang
ng
gusto-
discussion natin, no?
parang gusto ko silang
Napakadaming
bigyan ng-
feedback
Gusto ko
ng
silang
crown.
bigyan ng award.
Lahat sila panalo, no? Tapos meron pa tayong of course, researcher within our group, no? Gusto lang bigyan ng pansin yung mga feedback natin online, no? Yung mga guests natin, yung mga viewers natin, nagsasabi sila, no? Even from Ireland, sinasabi ni Sherwin Salangsang, right here in Ireland, we have virtual queue and online booking para hindi na pumila and wait in line for social distancing. So next week po, meron tayong guest, no? Hindi ko po muna i-reveal, no? Meron tayong guest courtesy of Mr. Earth. No? Inibita niya yung bisita natin for next episode. Abangan niyo po yan. Tungkol po yan sa mga virtual queue, no? And, other technology na pwedeng gamitin natin for an easier and more convenient experience for our customers. Ako rin personally, tinry ko mag-dine out, no? And you observe, no? May mga restaurants sa madaling pumasok because naka-QR code. Meron kailangan mong mag-fill up ng papel, no? Iba-iba eh. So, I think there still needs to be a lot of improvement in that respect para mag-improve yung experience ng ating customers. Sige lang, Miss Cher, ituloy natin ang ating pagtatanong sa ating mga guests. Parang nag-free shot na si Cher.
I think so too.
Oo, plantita pa naman siya kanina sa background niya, no? Diba? Plantita siya sa kanyang background, no? So, yan po mga technical difficulties. Kasi sa kalaman po ng lahat, si Cher ay nasa Kuala Lumpur, no? Sa Kuala Lumpur. Pero usually, mataas yung kanilang signal. But anyways, we will take this opportunity dahil walang nagbabantay sa akin. Nababatiin ko yung mga ibang nanonood Maraming salamat po, Mr. Engineer Noel Marqueses, no? Of course, yung anak ko, nanonood parati yan. Iyam. Ang ganda ng jacket mo, no? Pati jacket ko
Pinira mo ba yan,
binabati
sir,
niya.
sa kanya?
Si Comy, of course, no? Julio, si Brother Comy, nanonood. Si Zark, Barona. No? Maraming salamat, partner. Si Mami Sin Pineda is also watching. RR Gallego is also watching. No? Antonio Sagum is also watching. Mac London. Ako, ang daming fans ni Julio na mga bumabate. Oh. Tito Hulls, no? Talagang sikat si Julio. Siyempre si Jelden, no? Ayan, si Architect Cesar Tula, binabati kayo, no? Bianca, no? Ayan, si Jel, marami ring taghanga mula sa Shakey's Pizza. No? Mga kaibigan mo sa Shakey's, Jel, binabati ka rin nila. So anyways, to continue our discussion, no? So far, sinasabi ng mga bisita, and I'd like to highlight this insight, no? From experiential. Tandaan niyo ba mga kapatid, yung dati ang buzzword ay experiential? Di ba? Kada meeting mo, dahil pinag-uusapan, experiential. No? From experiential, napunta tayo bigla sa ang tanging hinahanap ng guest natin, ng mga customers natin sa restaurant. Gaya na sinabi ni Mr. Earth kanina, is safety and accessibility. Naging mas fundamental yung hinihingi nila. No? And I think that's a clear sign, no? Ang ganda ng survey kanina, sinabi, question number 1, ganito, question number 2, bakit natatakot? Question, gano'ng kadalas? Bakit hindi gano'ng kadalas? No? At yung dahilan kung bakit hindi gano'ng kadalas. And then number 4, sinabi, basta lagyan nyo ng safety protocols, lalabas uli kami at pupunta kami. For as long as they feel more confident and parang mas at ease sila. Sige. So, sa pagbabalik ng ating official na taga-tanong, no? Kinabahan ako dahil nawawala yung taga-tanong. Michelle.
Sorry about that. I think masyadong humid dito sa KL kaya nag-overheat si PC. But anyway, thankful for the phone as another option. So, third question. So, how can restaurants expand? At this point, how can restaurants expand their reach and their network of stores during the pandemic?
May nag-expand ba in the first place? At kung may nag-expand, paano kaya sila mag-expand? Yan ang expertise ng mga bisita natin, mga business development practitioners yan. So mamaya papaliwanag nila yung mga pinanggalingan nila. So kasi sinalang kagad nila natin sila agad sa katanungan.
Hindi nagkaroon ng chance, no?
To introduce themselves, no? Nawala yung portion na yun, eh. Excited tayo magtanong. Sige. Go ahead. Sige, Julio. Ikaw muna,
Okay.
Julio.
Sige, so just to introduce myself again to everyone who is watching right now, I'm Julio. Personally, I've worked with some of the people here as well, and we're operating in a close circle lang naman eh. Kadalasan mga business development practitioners know each other. Professionally, I've been part of several brands na for the past, I would like to say 6, 7 years now. Spanning from casual dining markets to, I guess, my longest stint, which is why I'm here and why I've worked with the people here as well as my time with Zark. I was the business development manager and franchising manager at the same time for Zark for a little over 5 years. Since the inception of the brand up until to where it was now. Outside of that, I'm a hobbyist. That's about it. Yun lang yung relevant things that people need to know.
Sige, tanong daw Julio, how can, may expansion ba na magaganap ngayon? And if there's expansion that's happening, paano mag-expand ang mga restaurants ngayon?
Right. I think yung automatically businessmen or like owners would be apprehensive in terms of pushing for expansions right now. While I would like to say that is the rational way to go about it, slowing down your business, it actually isn't. There's plenty of opportunities that's abound and na nabuhay because of the pandemic as well. We always talk about the negative implications of the pandemic to the restaurant industry, but one of the potentials that it has is it offers us a way to pivot our business then into more creative avenues. No? So one of this is, I guess, if you're already operating, for example, a large space, you can consider subleasing a portion of it. No, maybe to the extent of where it's practical for you. At the same time, house another brand there that might be beneficial for you to share the overhead expenses. No, it might be a temporary stint for the moment, or it could be a long-term partnership then to for you guys who sky's the limit on how you are able to utilize or maximize your assets at the current uh, time. No? So one of the models that we see not only here but abroad also is this idea of shared kitchen spaces. No, na sometimes it's time bound na usually sa mga non-peak hours of your operations, if you're not using your kitchen naman, why not lease it out to another brand who can operate it and be more productive at your you know uh, lean hours. No, also alternatively, you can consider expansions in a delivery hub na model, also trying to downsize your concept, downsizing your menu to what works. This can be reinforced by the data that you've accumulated throughout the pandemic also. Kasi for sure nag-iba yung dining habits as well as preferences ng mga both mga trial customers, at the same time your loyalists, no. So it's branching out onto more accessible locations that are much easier to operate in terms of overhead expenses, this being smaller ones. No? Also, I'd like to add that this is a great opportunity for us, no, especially for the chefs, for the visionaries of the restaurant industries to develop new concepts. No, it's great, or you could create, and I've seen this being done already. It's creating offshoots of their best or one of their best performing products into an independent brand. Kasi one thing that most restaurants fail to realize also in terms of the psychology of consumers nowadays is where we tend to pattern our preferences to or dishes to brands. Eh. No, it's unlike before na when you say anong brand ba? You would prefer going out to a restaurant that houses a wide array of cuisines. Right now, it's much more targeted and mas nuanced yung preferencing ng consumers in the digital age. Eh. So, for example, if I would crave for pizza, I know which brand I'd go for easily for wings, for burgers, for etc. No? That's how I'm conditioned to operate na today. Eh. So also it's experimenting with non-traditional ways to brand or rebrand your concepts. No? So it's narrowing down your target market, no, making your messaging more appropriate to the consumers that you'd like to attract. No, and again, it's all about being flexible in this current time. I think yeah, that sums it up. Yeah.
Galing.
Boss
How about
Rommel,
you,
if I
ano?
may add,
Yes, of course, of course.
Yes, sir.
so actually there's actually a mall chain that is working with Tangere. No? So by Tangere, we actually work across industries, even politicians, as I mentioned earlier before this show. And I just like to share that the same concern of the restaurant industry, of the F&B industry, is the same concern, syempre, of these mall operators. And one
Yeah.
of the mall operators, their CFO, was my former client. And until Tanghe, nadala ko siya, pinakausap niya sa akin the operations head. And they were even asking me, do you know experts in and taking off from Sir Julio's point, no? cloud kitchens. Na parang kasi nga umaabot na sila sa point na dati, okay, kung dati food court, kumbaga shared space is the dining space. Ito, the other way around na. They're even trying to be as creative as that. And this is a mall chain na hindi dito sa Manila nag-ooperate. This is a mall chain na provincial ang operation. So those who would like to to get in touch with nagpapahanap talaga sila sa akin right now ng who can we talk to and discuss cloud kitchens and all that.
Ayan,
No?
yung tatlong bisita na yan yung mga taong hinahanap nila. Yan yung mga business development.
Yun naman pala eh. Oo. So I hope you don't mind I refer you guys to I'll tell you later who, okay? But they belong to a big family corporation in the south.
Ako, alam na namin
amigo na ako sa mga amigo na ako sa mga Cebuano
letter
na.
na yan. Letter na yan.
G for go. Anyways, so anyway. So I can connect you to them. No? Sa akin, at this point nga, let's bridge each other. Pero yun nga, sa akin, the fact na sila na yung nagtanong, nagulat ako. I didn't even know what a cloud kitchen was. I had to research that for them. And taking off from what you were saying, that sounds like a cloud kitchen.
Yes.
So meron talaga as we would like to believe nga in Tangere. Yes, there are challenges in this pandemic. Pero if we look deeper and closer, and maybe look at things with a different set of eyes, so to speak. Hindi naman duleng, no? Pero clear vision na ibang vision. There are opportunities eh. There are kumbaga sparks of brilliance na uy, ito opportunity and we'll never know. We just have to be creative. And to take off from Sir Julio's point. Yes, maraming challenges pero meron talaga ring opportunity.
Okay.
You just have to look a little harder and a little deeper.
Galing. How about you, Jel?
Jel, yeah.
Jel, you have to introduce yourself also.
Oh, hi.
You're not able to.
Oh, I'm Jel. I've been with business development for 10 years now. So my focus more is on, I've been in business development, restaurant side for 5 years. And now I'm more into the retail side. So more on grocery, mga ganyan. But more or less, they're basically the same. I'm looking for sites for expansion and handling franchising also before. So I've worked with Coach and Bianca. So there. Then, okay, so answering the question, how can restaurants expand? Or are they really expanding nowadays? So I think, as I mentioned earlier with my previous answer, most of the restaurants nowadays are actually not into expanding. They're not even into renovating their own stores. So the focus more now is survival. So I think the challenges that we're experiencing right now, not only with the restaurant, but with other businesses as well, will help us explore other opportunities or explore our weaknesses, and then use that weaknesses to make it our strengths nowadays. So I think we can focus more on, like, since we're not into really expanding or expansion, I think most restaurants or business owners, I think, can optimize the use of social media or presence online. So not only the social media, but also their own websites. They can also use the help of the influencers. So also, I think having a drive-through concept will help. I think most of the fast food nowadays are, jam-pack yung yung drive-through nila nowadays because of what's happening. And also the takeout service. I've experienced one in SLEX. I think it's very efficient. Where you park and then you call them and then they will give you your order.
Right.
Parang hindi ka na bababa sa sa car mo. You just call them and then order right away. So it's a fast food kasi, so it's is faster, of course, but with casual dining, I think it will be easier also for for people if we have pre-orders.
Right.
So it will be helpful not only dun sa safety ng staff but also the safety of the customers. So I think it's very very important to consider not only the safety of the customers but also of course the safety of our staff. So kasi sila yung partner natin with in terms of our businesses. So I think that's the most important. If our staff are all or our partners are all safe, makikita na rin ng mga customers natin yon. Another thing na I want to share is with the result of the survey. Kasi me myself, I feel safe kapag pag you see everything that is safe. I mean, if you see everything is in proper place or everything is in order, or or at least they're doing the they're doing the minimum, or not only the minimum, sorry, they're doing what is beyond expected of them. So I think that's the most important factor that the business owners or the restaurant owners should consider these days.
All right. I'm Bianca pala. To introduce ko lang myself, no? I'm Bianca. I am currently the franchising and business development manager for Buffalo's Wings and Things. I know nga Julio and Jel because we've worked together, sites that are next to each other. Uy, baka we can share, mga ganon. Pwede ka din dito. Jel naman and I were working together previously in a different company. So I've been in business development for the last 7 years. And I've gone through different casual dining groups in the Philippines. And that's where I get my experience from. So yun, that's the intro of me. In terms of the question that we have, I think that there's two ways of going about it. On the one hand, I agree that definitely, we have to be creative about the way that we approach business models and, maximizing the existing real estate which we have. Julio was correct in talking about, ghost kitchens and all of those innovations. In fact, we'll see that trend in the US where those restaurants which have very large footprints are coming up with spin-offs which do not really have a brick and mortar. They're making use of kitchens which already exist and, creating a brand new brand and focusing on a sole product that they can maximize revenues from in order to make use of that space. So that's one way of looking at it. And of course, entering into the digital sphere, ensuring that you are still increasing, the number of people and patrons that you have for your existing restaurants. So that's great. But I'm going to take a more positive spin and say that definitely there's still room for expansion right now. It really just depends on how you go about choosing your business model and nuancing it to maximize the resources which you have. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of areas which are closing now, and a lot of retail space which is opening up, which is where the opportunity actually exists. We know that the markets are always driven by the law of demand and supply. And now that there are a lot of vacancies, this is actually an opportune time for you to find, those little areas that you had wanted to get, which you could never access, but now all of a sudden became free. And since you have the bargaining power because it's been vacant and, people aren't necessarily as willing to take the risk, if you have that positive long-term mindset, this is actually the perfect time for you to invest and to, try out something new, get the smaller spaces, try out the smaller business model. I mean, that's the kind of pivot also that Julio was talking about, introducing something new that would fit this particular time and would still address the needs of your market, which we know are continuously shifting. So it's accessibility. It's making the most of the opportunity to find those spaces at good rates right now, make those smaller investments, and still, give your brand an opportunity to be known by markets that you hadn't previously been able to tap. So twofold. It's definitely make the most out of the real estate which you have, but also take advantage of the market, which should be playing in your favor right now.
Right.
Well, I guess if I may add lang, no, yung insights ng mga bisita natin, sabi ko nga, the restaurant industry is in good hands, share, because nakita mo naman yung level ng discourse natin dito with our 4 guests, no? These young people are, I'm proud of all of you, no? Younger than me lahat naman kayo. Yeah. Huwag na tayo magsabihan ng student
Actually,
student
gusto,
number.
Student
ang gusto ko,
Magagalit lang uli ako.
ang gusto ko lang tanungin, kung pagiging business development officer, nakakabata, kasi ang babata, but when they spoke about their experience, matagal na sila in this game, and their wisdom is like, parang masarap yung job nyo.
Sobrang blessed ako dahil nakatrabaho ko lahat yan eh. Nakatrabaho ko lahat yan. No, sa Zark,
Actually,
si Julio,
so Romel,
tapos
di ba
si
pag BizDev, sabi nga nila,
Bianca.
it's an excuse na ikaw si marketing, si sales, si strategist, you're everything.
Lahat.
So,
Yes.
on the contrary, nakakatanda. So, to give everyone my background naman, Boss Romel. So, America
Okay, go ahead.
So,
Oh,
yes, I'm actually also in business development. I'm also VP for sales and head for
yes.
Tange. So Tange, what I really came from is I'm gonna admit how many decades I've been VP and Execom for the IT and software industry. No, in fact,
Yun.
my team or myself have sold a lot of the systems or the software that you guys are using, and trust me, I've been a big fan of the F&B and resto industry from afar, no, selling the solutions that enable you guys, from the cloud solutions that weren't uso before to the big brands that siguro hindi ko na babanggitin, the Oracle and the things
Oracle.
like that. Yeah, so that's my background. That's where I came from. NetSuite companies that I sold before. But yun nga, I'm looking into the industry right now, taking off from what Miss Bianca shared earlier. The real estate. Di ba remember before this pandemic, nag-rise lahat ng rent because of the POGOs, even sa residential, no? And it really has driven up like 90% of the real estate transactions in the industry. In reverse, no, ngayon na there are either closures or medyo mas mababa yung demand, I agree na kung meron kang pinapangarap, for example, na restaurant, and there's that space that wasn't available to you before, and you're a visionary and you really believe in your vision even beyond the pandemic, and this pandemic will be over at some point, no, if we think of things positively, invest in that already kasi that space will still be prime space even beyond this pandemic. Kung nabakante yon at hindi mo ma-afford yun dati nung time na kasagsaran prior to the pandemic, now it's made available to you, parang suddenly there's that opportune time for you to drive yourself in. Besides, ang build up mo naman ng isang restaurant or isang concept sometimes takes time. Hindi naman 6 na buwan, 3 buwan, bukas na yan, di ba? So yeah, kumbaga, not naman that you're being opportunistic, but you're looking at the opportunities amidst these challenging times. So taking off from where our other speakers have shared earlier, I agree, no? So yung mga ganon, look at them as investment. They may look like risks right now, but they may be the best risks that you have done or that you have taken in your entrepreneurial career.
Okay.
Well, tama yun, dadagdagan ko rin lang, napakaganda ng sinabi ni Erk, no, na business development kasi is not just about expansion kaagad. No, napakahalaga that you recognize the ability of business development people to determine yung go-to business model. Kung meron tayong signature dish sa restaurant, dapat yung business model na go-to, yun yung i-define mo ngayong pandemic.
Right.
Kasi tama si Julio, nag-experiment, no, maraming modes, merong like sa US, even dito sa Pilipinas, no. Even yung kaibigan natin si Zark, no, nag-open siya ng iba-ibang mga concepts ngayon, yung race and yung howl, no. And within the same kitchen, no, optimizing kitchen spaces. Meron naman yung nag-streamline ng menu at parang gano'n lang sino-solidify yung kanilang core item, no? And meron naglo-launch ng mga new products, no? Gaya ng BWNT. We just launched yung boneless chicken. No, after years and years of R&D, and finally we say na nasa level na siya ng quality na tamang-tama, no, nasa pandemic tayo. And ako nga, to some degree, I believe that the reach and network of restaurants actually expanded. Not through brick and mortar expansion, but through the platforms. Like yung reach namin, yung brand namin lang, I can only speak about our brand. No, yung reach namin in terms of the delivery, we were able to migrate our business from yung early days ng pandemic to delivery. No? And hindi lahat nakaka-migrate sa delivery. So that's a blessing in itself and an opportunity that opened up for us. So imagine kung babalik yung dine-in and then ganun kalakas na yung delivery mo, so that will be incremental sales, no? And mas accessible ka na. I've always said, no, and sabi ko, nakatrabaho ko yung mga karamihan dito, no? Sa ating sinasabi yan, don't think of it as expansion. Think of it as, you're improving your accessibility. Because ang bottom line, sa customer's point of view, it's about their convenience and their accessibility to your brand.
Right.
Kailangan accessible yung brand mo, kailangan convenient, no? So yun naman ang labanan ngayon eh. So, brick and mortar is still one of the best sources of awareness, no? Nakita naman natin yan sa mga survey na ginawa ng Tangere, no? Doon sa mga nakaraang surveys, no? Even for our company. Nakita namin yan, but ngayon nag-evolve na yan. Ang visibility mo dapat nasa online, sabi nga ni Jel kanina, no? And the more well-versed you are in traversing yung migration into that digital space, no, na na-accelerate. But eventually you have to realize, no, parang ano yan eh, ngayon inaakay tayo ng mga aggregators. No, inaakay tayo kasi wala tayong sarili nating infrastructure, wala tayong sarili nating kaalaman, no, mastery. Pero eventually, no, maraming magsusulputan na consolidation within the industry. Yeah. And these consolidated companies or brands, no, and I'm boldly predicting it, no, as mas confident ako sa prediction ko diyan sa NBA Finals, no. Because ako naman basta wag lang Lakers, wag sana magalit yung mga Lakers sa akin. No? Anyway,
first time na ako mag-finals in decades eh.
Mag-bold yung prediction ko na yun nga, there will be consolidation just for the purpose of consolidating their infrastructure for digital.
Yes.
No, and automation, yan ang susunod na trend talaga. So, kumbaga expansion has been redefined, and our guest tonight has pointed that out, no, na hindi yung concept mo ng expansion, hindi rin siya limited na so kung ano yung concept ng expansion. Prior to COVID, nagkaroon siya ng bagong muka. And kailangan you have to be responsible as a business development practitioner to understand kung saan papunta yung trend. No? Kung saan papunta yung trend, ano nangyayari. And tama ka, yung responsibility of making sure that there's a go-to business model. Because part of our responsibility, kids, no? Mga kasama ko rito sa business development, no? Tandaan nyo, we're also responsible for making sure that the business models that we're promoting, pati sa'yo, Earth, no? Yung napaganda ng platform ng Tangere, no? I salute you guys, is viable, feasible, responsible. No? Yun yung tatlong bagay na napakahalaga sa negosyo. So, sorry na-interrupt ko. Alam ko hindi ako ang tinanong mo, pero sumagot na rin ako. Ha?
Sir, before before siguro we get out of this topic lang din, I'd like to add lang if you don't mind me.
Go ahead.
Just to unload a bit of the pressure from our entrepreneurs and the restaurant owners and the employees that we have today, no? Siguro there should be a shared the onus is shared din dapat by the developers, and if there's anyone out here who forms part of the developer side of things, and if you're listening, I'd like to pose a challenge for you guys is to in creating spaces or complexes or locations, areas that are also conducive for these new models to thrive and to work in, kasi unang-una it will make our work easier, at the same time, you are now attracting a new breed of entrepreneurs, brands, and restaurant owners to pivot, and to adapt to this new way of operating and navigating the restaurant industry, if there are already conducive locations to operate in. So be forward thinking, also in your development plans, and if in doubt, talk to the restaurants. And they'll push you in the right direction. And I'm sure of that.
I agree, no? And in fact, sabi nga kanina ni Bianca, this period in time, the better normal, as Eric would call it, ang daming collaboration na nangyari. And in fairness to the developers, no, they've been in close collaboration with Resto PH and all the other thought leaders ng industriya. Now more than ever, talaga nag-uusap-usap. Even yung mga malls, no, nag-uusap-usap sila for the first time. No, dati hindi nagpapansinan sila, no, pero ngayon nag-uusap-usap na sila. At they're coming up with solutions, and there's a lot of involvement and collaboration going on. And that's very good for the economy, no, and for the country in general.
Ang ganda ng discussion. Meron ako isang one final question. Ayan. In terms of, well, let's think of it as post-COVID, yung situation natin. Which of the effects of the innovations and or effects or the innovations from the pandemic will stick post-COVID or after vaccine? Ano yung mag-stick?
Okay. So I think the digitization of the restaurant industry is gonna be standard now. If you're a restaurant that isn't digitized yet at this day and age, what the hell are you doing, for lack of a better term? No? If you don't know how, find someone who will do it for you. No, there's a plethora of ways on getting your brand into the digital sphere now, and there is no excuse for you to sit idly and take this all in with optimism lang, without doing without being proactive as to getting your brand out there. Pangalawa, delivery and takeouts will form a big bulk of your sales moving forward, even after the pandemic, because it has now formed to be part of our of normalcy. So from with restaurants operating at 20%, 30% dati na delivery takeout sales ratio lang, I'm sure right now baka umabot pa ng 60 to 70 yan moving forward. Another is there will always be I think a prolonged expectation for our restaurants to be fully sanitized and hold the same standards of service pa rin, even post the pandemic period. Because again, beyond the economic implications, it's the mental impact and the perception of the market that we're trying to navigate din moving forward. So for sure may shock pa, may aftershock pa yan sa mga consumers natin. So talking about the efficiency and the speed of service will also be mandatory. You have to be fast, you have to be quick. People would want their food and orders at the same time be efficient now. And I guess the industry will be on their toes na moving forward in terms of risk management, as to how to go about the next pandemic, may it be developing alternative business models or an exit strategy or a way to pivot their assets into something. What else? And I think there's also gonna be a growing demand, if not a bigger emphasis on harvesting and analyzing data into a more what you call this, proactive na part or factor in how we operate not only the restaurant sphere but all of the businesses that we if you don't have a data guy right now, I suggest you look for one. Yeah. So analytics talaga will be the biggest determinant of which brands are able to scale moving forward, and and how they'll optimize these numbers to their advantages. So and what else? I think there will also be what do you call this, a more factual approach on, navigating our operations on a day-to-day basis. No? We will be grounded, no? And I hope we will be grounded after this pandemic, no? And take our operations in a more truthful and factual approach. No? I think
Thank you, Julio. Binigyan mo ako ng magandang seg. Speaking of great data guy, any thoughts, Irk?
Okay, so taking off from actually I was just about very much Sir Julio for and taking the words out of my mouth already. So I'm not even going to expound so much on what you said because right on the dot. Digitization, data-driven decision making. That is one thing that I think that will be sticking with everyone, not just the F&B industry, not just the restaurant industry, but with everyone. Hindi na pwede yung gut feel, not like our lolos times, no? Because now,
Sakit mo naman magsalita.
I'm not classifying as dolo, sir. You're sabi nga ni Aga, lakas makabagets.
Yeah,
Yes.
Tito lang.
All right. So data-driven decision making. That is something that we should take away from this whole experience. And the feeling of safety, yes, dati kasi that's taken for granted by a lot of by a lot of business operations, no. That should be the norm, even beyond the pandemic. And even two more things I'd just like to add, no, more than those things that Sir Rudy added. Is people, the importance of people, that were loyal, that served you well. The fact that okay, ang sarap lang na when you're a restaurant, oh my God, people are back in my restaurants dining in. The appreciation of people and to people, and just being that spirit of pakikipagkapwa-tao. In fact, in our earlier studies nung start ng pandemic, yung mga brands na napansin na, and there's a fine line din, no, between doing CSRs or all of these operation tulongs and things like that, just for show, and doing them because your core or who you are as a business or as people, no. And yung talagang nakita nilang genuinely, oh my God, ito yung without batting an eye, share this and that during the height of the pandemic, people will tend to remember that. Those brands, those companies that were part of those initiatives, people will tend to become more loyal to you, even beyond this pandemic.
Yeah.
So remember that the way that you brand yourselves as a business, that's part of that, no? The sensitivities to the communities that we operate in. Branding has got beyond like familiarity. It also goes hand in hand with that. What did you do during the pandemic? And people will remember that even beyond this whole COVID-19 pandemic.
Sa Tagalog nagkakilala tayo ngayong pandemya. Totoo 'yun. Nagkakilala tayo ng totoo at husto ngayong pandemya. Maraming salamat. Napakaganda ng sinabi. How about you, Miss Jeleen? Anong sa tingin mo mag-stick even after the pandemic?
Well, aside from the social distancing, I think the new normal of Resto, aside from perfecting their dishes, would be sanitation. So I think it will stick even after magkaroon tayo ng vaccine, because yun nga, our customers will really require us or require the businesses to implement such. Okay, not only that, I think it's also important. It will also stick sa atin because of pandemic. The way we understand the behavior of our customers, not only before the pandemic but during the pandemic as well. So how do they behave? So paano po tayo how are we gonna address those behaviors? So parang this pandemic kasi is like a test sa atin that we can in the future work around. So pag dumating ulit, knock on wood, wag naman tayo magkaroon ulit ng pandemic, we know how to handle everything. We know how to address, we know what to do, we know, or at least manage the situation. So I think also what will stick even after the pandemic would be the use or our use of or our presence online. So I think yun nga, magiging digitalized ng lahat. And also with delivery, of course, as mentioned by Julio, contactless payment, I think this is very crucial also. Most of our customers doesn't want to touch any, money or coins. Mas prefer nila ang contactless payments. And also with restaurants, it's also crucial to have the QR codes for menus, or yung medyo online na tayo na makita natin yung menu, so you don't have to touch anything or you don't have to touch the physical menu. So it's really also important for to adapt to it. I guess that's it.
Bianca?
That was pretty comprehensive. I was trying to think the whole time. I'm like, wow, Julio covered a lot. And then nasa part ko heard, tapos nagbigay dun si Jel. So parang, it's like, okay.
Kaya ako piniling mauna, Bianca.
Yeah. Pero na-realize ko, I think something which we failed to talk about yet tonight is that there was also an emergence of a so-called informal sector in the food industry. So we have a lot of home bakers and home cooks now who, are sharing also their talents. And, while we have a lot of chains that may be closing, I feel like these little, pop-ups are going to be a mainstay. Of course, they won't be as easily accessible maybe moving forward when, the work hours normalize. Yeah, but definitely, the competition is going to remain to be there from those smaller players. So like what Jel was saying and what Julio was also saying, quality will always be of paramount importance. Quality of the product, quality of the safety and sanitation protocols that you have, quality of the way that you communicate who you are, your values, and the value also of your product. All of those things are always going to remain, definitely moving forward. And accessibility, not just in terms of your physical stores, but now people are so used to being able to have your product delivered. So now that we're moving towards delivery, it's how are you going to further improve the quality of your delivered products? What innovation can you actually create that would give you an advantage that even after all of this, people will still choose you because they know that even if I have it delivered, it's almost as good. It's never going to be as good, but it's almost as good as if I were to have it in the store. So it's convenience. I think people are being spoiled for convenience, accessibility, and definitely quality.
Wow, yun yung masasabi ko sa episode natin ngayong gabi, partner. Ang galing, ang gagaling ng mga batang to.
Masterclass!
Oo, kung highly recommended for replay watching, especially po sa mga nagtatayo. Sabi nga, nabanggit, mga nagsisimula sa negosyo, even yung mga nag-a-adapt ngayong pandemya, napakaganda pong episode. Kasi sinasabi natin dito parate, hindi po ako ang resto coach. Ang resto coach po ay lahat ng taong bumibisita rito na nag-share ng kanilang, kaya nga coach and share. Yung mga nagko-coach, yung mga nag-share ng kanilang talento, at higit sa lahat, kaya parati ko pong ina-advocate yung intellectual, discussions, higher level of discourse, Pag po tayo, kasi minsan napakadaling magkomentary sa social media, napaka-madaling mawalan ng responsibilidad sa ating mga sinasabi. Ito po ngayong gabi, patunay na pwede po tayong mag-usap na talagang napaka-productive po at napaka-insightful. And I'm proud of all of our guests. Maraming salamat, Mr. Erk. Maraming salamat sa inaanak ko si Jel, at si Brother Julio, at of course si Bianca, na isa pang parang anak ko din yan si Bianca. So,
thanks for having us tonight. Really appreciate the sharing of thoughts.
Salamat. Share, ikaw ang merong, kumbaga sa basketball, ikaw ang merong inevitable task of being like the referee in a basketball game. Ikaw ang magsa-summarize ng top 3.
Ang hirap nun. Actually, yung top 3 ko parang pang 22 episodes. Parang 22 episodes. Sa dami ng insights. Ang hirap niya i-compile talaga lahat. But first things first, the first thing that we have to make sure to remember is the results of yung ating Tangere QSR, where the consumer's basic ask to make sure that they build confidence to dine out is safety. So, yun yung...
Safety first.
Safety first. So, hindi ko muna gagamitin yung point 1 ko. Hindi ko point 1 yun. Kasi inaano ko lahat. mahirap nandaya. So, basically, the one that I particularly like is that na-identify yung upside of the pandemic, what happened. The impact of finding value of the team and the people around you. So yung attitude of gratitude, yung bayanihan spirit, and really the unsung heroes who provided the comfort, the convenience, and the service despite and in spite of what happened. Yan. So yun, doon pa lang parang first 10 minutes pa lang natin, wow, ang bigat na. Pero, ano siya, truth siya talaga. Second point is, working towards a better normal. Ayan, gagamitin na natin ang better normal. Mas gusto ko yung better normal talaga kaysa sa new normal. Where in
Sarap pakinggan, di ba?
Sarap, better normal, di ba? Kasi we're not settling for, ito na to. It's striving to require agility, creativity, flexibility, and data-driven decision-making. So, na-highlight natin yung di ba? Yung point na yon, where we identify pockets of opportunity. Na-highlight din kanina in terms of identifying or maximizing real estate, as well as yung other side would be exploring previously unavailable spaces or markets. So yun yung pockets of opportunity na dito sa better normal, makakaisip tayo ng other perspective or pivot ways. And the third point is, I think it summarizes it very well in terms of the one you mentioned, Coach, the business model of being viable, feasible, and responsible. Pandemic or no pandemic, those 3 points are very important in the business model. Ayun, ang bigat.
In fact, no, may habol tayong meron tayong nanonood ngayon si Miss Marinor de Guzman. No? Natutuwa siya. She's from May Kawayan, Bulacan. Ang sabi niya, thank you for the nice information and sharing. I'm a restaurateur here in May Kawayan. So yan, no? So buong Pilipinas po tayo, pati yung mga nasa ibang bansa, ang ating pong resto coach, no? Para po tapusin ang ating napaka-punong-punong palabas, no? Ngayong gabi na to, no? Punong-puno, hitik na hitik, no? Ayan po, no? Siyempre, nakakulay pink siya, no? One of my favorite colors, no? Ang sabi dyan, no? Sinyer ko naman niya sa page natin. Sabi dyan, to feel true belonging, we must acknowledge humanity's interconnectedness. No, tayo po, nakita nyo po ngayong gabi, napatunayan po natin kung gaano po tayo magkakaugnay, no? Magkakatali-tali po tayo yung ating mga bituka bilang mga tao. No? At yung kung hindi po natin ito matututunan ngayong pandemya, hindi nyo na po yan tingin ko matututunan kahit kailan pa. No, sapagkat nakita natin yung value of belonging to a group, belonging to a community, belonging to a family. But belonging also entails yung ating paborito, pagiging grateful, mindful, respectful, at accountable. Hindi pwedeng accountable para mag-rhyme lang. Accountable. Yan po yung importante dyan sa interconnectedness, yung individual and collective accountability. Galing po yan sa Ubuntu. Sorry, natalo ang Celtics at natalo ang Clippers si Doc. Si Doc Rivers po, isang coach ng NBA na yan po, isa sa mga pinaniniwala nila yung pagiging interconnected ng mga tao. So ngayong gabi po nakita nyo na I'm proud of all the guests, I mean, you brought the level of discourse to a level that is really something to be proud of and needed by the industry. Lalong nabuo yung optimism ko. And with that, we end the show with gratefulness and saying that you all stay safe, stay healthy, and stay optimistic. Magandang gabi po and God bless all of us.